Okay, so let's resume from where we had left. So we'll start from Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 238, from verse number 238. But before that, as we had said, that we will give you a brief description of the divorce issue in Islam, of the talaq issue in Islam, in an easy manner so that it's easy for us to understand. We want to do this because there is a lot of confusion surrounding the issue of talaq or divorce in Islam. So, in the last few verses in this chapter, till verse number 237, there was an elaborate discussion about divorce issues in Islam, about talaq in Islam, about talaq issues in Islam. So let's summarize that and present to you in an easy manner. But we will also, but we will also want to clarify some of the confusions that are prevalent in the Muslim Ummah, not just in Muslim Ummah, but these misconceptions are also held by the non-Muslims, and unfortunately it is these misconceptions are shared by the Muslims, though there should not really have been any confusion about these issues. So the first issue that we want to address is about what has been referred to, or what is referred to as the triple talaq issue, triple divorce issue, the pronouncement of triple divorce in Islam. So let us look at this issue, what it is actually about. So there is a massive confusion that divorce in Islam is validated only when three pronouncements of talaq or divorce is pronounced. This is not the case at all. The Quran clearly clarifies, and we will just present that in a very easy manner, that a single pronouncement of divorce is as valid as a double pronouncement of divorce and a triple pronouncement of divorce. So many people, they don't have this idea, and this is where most of the confusion arises from, that they do not know that a single pronouncement of talaq or divorce is considered to be divorce. So what is this about the triple talaq issue, which makes a huge ruckus, hue and cry in the media, and everywhere people seem to be discussing about this issue. Basically, if a man pronounces the statement of talaq or divorce once, then she has to wait. There is a waiting period, idda period of 3 months. It's not 3 months, it's 3 monthly cycles, three menstrual cycles, basically, because the menstrual cycles usually correspond with the monthly cycles. So it is referred to as the monthly cycles. It's three menstrual cycles. So once that period is over, the talaq is, the talaq happens, the talaq becomes valid. Uh, in between, in this period, in this waiting period, if they reconcile, then that is allowed. So if they reconcile, that is allowed. Now what happens is, after, if they do not reconcile, for example, if they do not reconcile and they separate, as they separate from their husband and wife status, then it is allowed for them to get remarried. But then a fresh nikah has to be performed with a fresh meher, with a new meher, the the gift, basically, which is presented from the man to his wife. So, and they, so let us take this. Let us take the discussion to its completion now. So let us assume that they have been separated once, and then they decide to remarry. They realize that they were better married than they are separate. So it is said that do not prevent them from remarrying the former husbands. Do not prevent the girl, the lady, from remarrying the former husbands. So now, once they remarry, which they're allowed to do, then again, if there arises difference of opinion amongst them, so much so that they want to separate again, another pronouncement of talaq, this is the second pronouncement, of talaq, if it is pronounced, and if they do not reconcile within the 3 monthly cycles, 3 menstrual cycles waiting period, then they again separate as man and wife. Now, even after the two divorce statements, pronouncements, when they are living separately as man and woman, not as husband and wife, if they somehow want to remarry, then they are allowed to. So this is the third time they're getting married with a fresh nikah contract, marriage contract, wedding contract, and with a fresh meher gift. So, and the marriage again is absolutely valid. Now, if there is again differences of opinion between the husband and the wife, so much so that they want to separate, then after the third pronouncement of the talaq, and after, I mean, the third time, it's with immediate effect. Basically, it's with immediate effect. So now they separate as man and woman, not as husband and wife anymore. So now, after the three pronouncements of talaq has been pronounced, they cannot remarry. It makes sense as well, because it's not a game, it's not a joke that they marry and they pronounce divorce. It's not something to be taken lightly. Marriage is a serious issue, and so in Islam, it actually provides a scope for the man and the woman to remarry, and this scope is allowed twice. But after the third time, it's, if it is pronounced, then it's irrevocable. So that man cannot marry that woman unless that woman marries another man, and then if the second husband divorces her, only then the first husband is allowed to remarry the his previous, I mean his wife. So now there is a big there is a very important discussion that needs to be done at this moment, that this second marriage, I mean the woman's marriage with a second husband, cannot be established with the intention that the second husband would divorce her after a specific time period. What is done in the name of halala, this is called halala, that the wife, I mean the lady, is married to a second husband with pre-arrangements that the second husband will divorce her, and so the first husband can remarry her. This is absolutely not allowed. Uh, the pre-arranged, I mean the pre-arrangements are absolutely not allowed. This is not halala, this is haram. Halala means that to make the wife, the lady, halal once again for the first husband. This is absolutely haram. This is not halal at all. What happens is, if the wife marries the second husband and things don't go well without any prior arrangements, and then they are divorced, only then they are allowed to remarry. So this is basically the concept of divorce in Islam, talaq in Islam. There is one more issue though, that what happens if a triple talaq is pronounced at one go? What then? See, the procedure, the standard procedure for talaq is very clearly established in the Quran. It's very clearly noted down in the Quran, so there should be no confusion about it. This is the standard procedure. But if someone were not to follow the standard procedure, what then? This is the question, and there is much debate over this question. Some people, they think that if they pronounce triple talaq at a single go, then it is valid. It becomes valid, and the wife becomes haram for him. Uh, and this is the opinion of the four major fiqhs or schools of thought: the Hanafi fiqh, the Maliki fiqh, the Shafi fiqh, and the Hanbali fiqh. But we want to take you back to the historical uh, procedure of what used to happen in the early generations, in the earliest of times. So during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, a triple talaq in one setting was considered to be a single talaq. So this is actually the correct ruling, the correct understanding, though the four schools of thought, the major schools of thought, they all have a different opinion. But if we go back to the time period of the Prophet ﷺ, that is the best ruling regarding this issue. And during the time of the caliphate of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu, this practice continued. It was only during the time of the caliphate of Umar radhiyallahu anhu that he pronounced that triple talaq in one setting would constitute as triple talaq. Now, why did he decide to do so? He saw that people had made a joy and game and fun, and they were not treating this seriously. They were making a joke out of this, the the whole institution of marriage, and they were playing around with it. So he was very strict in that, and so much so that it was not just considered to be triple talaq. The person, the man who pronounced the triple talaq, he was considered to have committed a major sin, a major crime, and he was punished for that. So not just, it's not a game that you just do away with it and wash your hands of it. No, he decided to implement this understanding, this law, because the people had made a joke out of the institution of marriage, and it's supposed to be a holy institution, a pure institution. And not just that, the thing that is not discussed these days is the fact that the man would be punished, severely punished, for having committed this act, for not having followed the standard procedure in accordance with the Quran. So this was basically the correct understanding. So whatever you see in the media, what they project in the TV, it's absolutely rubbish. This is causing much harm to the society, to the understanding of this very important critical issue about marriage and divorce laws in Islam. So I hope that helps. And from after having clarified this issue, we can now proceed with our from where we had left, from Surah Baqarah chapter number 2, verse number 238 onwards. Let's get started. So Surah Baqarah chapter number 2, verse number 238. We'll read this verse. Guard strictly your habit of prayers, especially the middle prayer, and stand before Allah in a devout frame of mind. In a devout frame of mind. So this middle prayer, it has been unanimously agreed. There is a scholarly consensus that this refers to. This basically referred to as Salat al-Wusta. This basically refers to the Asr prayer, the Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. So that's the working day, sort of, for a Muslim, the working day. So Asr comes at the third place, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. So by Salatul Wusta, the middle prayer is meant the Asr prayer. Now, there are things which we can touch upon, but it should ideally be covered in a separate session because it would be a very lengthy discussion. To keep it short, I just want to give you the verdict without going too much into the explanation. There is something called the counting of a 24-hour period in Islam, and that starts at Maghrib. That starts at Maghrib, from sunset till the next sunset. So sunset to sunset, that's the keeping track of the 24-hour cycle, 24-hour period for a day, for a yom basically. And for a working day, the counting starts from Fajr till next Fajr. Now, I know you will become, some of you will have certain questions in your mind, but we don't really have the time to go into the detailed explanations. We have we will actually, inshallah, we intend to, inshallah, have a separate session on this. Uh, to give you a brief analogy, to give you a brief analogy, in the solar calendar system, we take 12 midnight as the starting point of the day. But is 12 midnight for any practical purposes considered to be day in the solar calendar system? Now, the day starts when people get up and people start their work. It may be different timings in uh, different countries, maybe 9 a.m. in the morning, maybe 10 a.m. in the morning, maybe 10:30 a.m. in the morning, maybe 8 a.m. in the morning. It varies, but not by much. It starts with the morning. So morning and then the cycle repeats. So there are clear proofs actually which suggests that for the counting purpose of the day and night, just as 12 midnight has been arbitrarily fixed for the solar calendar system, for the Islamic lunar calendar system, it is considered to be the Maghrib time, uh, because it is based on the lunar sightings, basically the moon sightings, and that only happens at sunset time. And so because it happens at the sunset time, what it essentially means that the new day starts. Otherwise, how could you possibly explain the performing of the Tarabi with the sighting of the new moon? If the night does not come before the day, which some people are unnecessarily trying to create some confusion about, they have basically no understanding about the concepts behind it, and they are massively misled by others who are trying to just spread this confusion around. So it doesn't happen that way. For example, you cite the, and there are various supporting evidences. As I said, we cannot go into all, but when you cite the new moon, the new month starts. And the fasting of the Ramadan would only be from Fajr till, I mean, Suhoor is still before Fajr. So Fajr to Maghrib. But then you would have already prayed the Taraweeh, the Qiyamul Layl for that night, for the first of Ramadan in the night itself. That itself proves that night comes first before day, and there are several other proofs which we cannot go into the details. So, so now they say one of the logic that they bring forth in support of the evidence that no, the day starts at Fajr, is that the Asr prayer is actually called the Salatul Wusta, the middle prayer. So as I said, this is the working day in the life of a Muslim, and the other is the day and night cycle for keeping account. For keeping account. So that's what it is. Uh, I know there will remain some questions, but we cannot go into further details. For example, if you say no, Fajr is the start of the day, then there are issues. For example, as I said, so the moon has been sighted, and say the Ramadan has begun, the month of Ramadan has begun. So night till Fajr, that evening, sunset time, Maghrib time till Fajr, which month will it be? I mean, it's already Ramadan. The month is already Ramadan, so you cannot push it to the previous day, the last day of the previous month. You can't do that. So we will actually discuss this in a detailed session in a separate session, not in this series, inshallah. So there we will discuss more about it. So that's it basically for the brief explanation about why, though the 24-hour cycle starts at Maghrib time, why the Asr has been referred to as Salatul Wusta. This is the working day basically in the life of a Muslim. Verse number 239: If you fear an enemy, pray on foot or riding, as may be most convenient. But when ye are in security, celebrate Allah's praises in the manner He has taught you, which ye knew but before. Those of you who die and leave widows should bequeath for their widows a year's maintenance without expulsion. But if they leave the residence, there is no blame on you for what they do with themselves, provided it is reasonable, and Allah is exalted in power, wise. For divorced women is a suitable gift. This is a duty on the righteous. Thus doth Allah make clear His signs to you in order that ye may understand. Didst thou not turn thy vision to those who abandon their homes Though they were thousands in number for fear of death, Allah said to them, "Die." Then He restored them to life. For Allah is full of bounty to mankind, but most of them are ungrateful. Then fight in the cause of Allah and know that Allah heareth and knoweth all things. Who is he that will loan to Allah a beautiful loan, which Allah will double unto his credit and multiply many times? It is Allah that giveth you want or plenty, and to him shall be your return. Hast thou not turned thy vision to the chiefs of the children of Israel after the time of Moses, Musa alayhi salam? They said to a prophet that was among them, "Appoint for us a king that we may fight in the cause of Allah." He said, "Is it not possible if ye were commanded to fight is it not possible, if ye were commanded to fight, that ye will not fight?" They said, "How could we refuse to fight in the cause of Allah, seeing that we were turned out of our homes and our families?" But then, but when they were commanded to fight, they turned back, except a small band among them. But Allah has full knowledge of those who do wrong. The Prophet said to them, "Allah hath appointed Talut as king." This in English language is referred to as Saul, Talut as king over you. They said, "How can he exercise authority over us when we are better fitted than he to exercise authority, and he is not even gifted with wealth and abundance?" He said, "Allah hath chosen him above you, and hath glorified him abundantly with knowledge and bodily prowess. Allah granteth his authority to whom he pleaseth. Allah is all embracing, and he knoweth all things." And further, the Prophet said to them, "A sign of his authority is that there shall come to you the Ark of the Covenant, with an assurance therein of security from your Lord, and the relics left by the family of Musa alayhi salam and the family of Harun alayhi salam, carried by angels. In this is a symbol for you, if you indeed have faith." When Talut set forth with the armies, he said, "Allah will test you at the stream. If any drinks of its water, he goes not with my army. Only those who taste not of it go with me. A mere sip out of the hand is excused." But they drank of it, except a few. When they crossed the river, he and the faithful ones with him, they said, "This day we cannot cope with Goliath." This is Jalut in Arabic, Goliath and his forces. But those who were convinced that they must meet Allah said, "How oft by Allah's will hath a small force vanquished a big one. Allah is with those who steadfastly persevere." So the English terms for Moses and the English terms is Moses and Aaron. In Arabic, we refer to them as Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam. As for Talut, Talut is Arabic, and in English we refer to him as Saul, and then Jalut in Arabic, and in English we refer to him as Goliath. Why I'm giving you both the terms is some of you may be more familiar with the English terms. For example, you may have heard the story of David and Goliath, and that's what we will read now. So, when they advanced to meet Goliath and his forces, they prayed, "Our Lord, pour out constancy on us and make our steps firm. Help us against those that reject faith." By Allah's will, they routed them, and David slew Goliath. And Allah gave him power and wisdom, and taught him whatever else he willed. And did not Allah check one set of people by means of another, the earth would indeed be full of mischief, but Allah is full of bounty to all the worlds. Now, the story about David and Goliath has been mentioned in the Quran in very brief terms. Let's give some more details about the story. There is a wisdom actually in the story that I want to highlight, and it's a remarkable, basically, the story about David and Goliath, Daud alayhi salam and Jalut, the evil person. So this Goliath was a huge person, huge. He was a giant. He was giant sized. He was basically a human being. He was a giant sized. So, and no one was willing to uh, come forward and encounter Jalut, Goliath. So Dawud alayhi salam at that time, he was not yet a prophet, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him wisdom and he was a brave man, but he was short in stature. He was short in stature. So he offered to go forward. And then some of the other people, they felt ashamed and then they also offered to go forward to fight Goliath. They were ashamed that this boy, this young man, was venturing to fight Goliath. How could he possibly do? He was short in stature. I mean, short in size, not in status. Short in size. So they offered, but then Dawud alayhi salam was very firm, and he went ahead. And we know how David killed Goliath. Dawud alayhi salam, how he killed Goliath, Jalut. So what was the thinking going on when they were at the scene, at the place of conflict? Now, the other people, now this is the wisdom which if Allah gives, I mean, if Allah does not give, you cannot possibly think on these terms. This is something remarkable. This can come only from the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the light, from His light, which He bestows upon you in your hearts. So, what the others were thinking was that how can we fight Jalut, Goliath? He is such a huge person. He is such a gigantic figure, gigantic person. He is such a giant. What was Dawud alayhi salam thinking? Dawud alayhi salam was thinking in these terms that this fellow, Jalut, Goliath, is so huge. I mean, look at the wisdom, look at the remarkable way of thinking which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed Dawud alayhi salam with. He was thinking that Jalut is so huge, Goliath is so huge, how can I possibly miss my target? How can I possibly miss my target? Look at the amazing way of thinking, and this happens only by Allah's help. Only by Allah's help. So he said, or he thought to himself, how can I possibly miss such a huge target? And we all know that through his, what is called his catapult or sling, he threw a stone and it hit him on his head, and then that's how David killed Goliath. Dawud al-Islam killed Jalut. So this is, I thought, something very remarkable in itself, and I thought it's better that if we know about this. It's nothing to know, it's some interpretation and something that we can, I mean, basically, you've understood what I wanted to convey. It's remarkable how the prophets of Allah are given special wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we continue. These are the signs of Allah. We rehearse them to thee in truth. Verily, thou art one of the messengers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that thou art one of the messengers. So here, actually, the part 2, the juz 2 ends, and part 3 is now beginning. As I said, these the division in juz is absolutely arbitrary. It doesn't make any sense at all. So we continue. Those messengers we endowed with gifts, some above others. To some of them Allah spoke, others he raised to degrees of honor. To Jesus, the son of Mary, we gave clear signs and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. If Allah had so willed, succeeding generations would not have fought among each other after clear signs had come to them, but they chose to wrangle, some believing and others rejecting. If Allah had so willed, they would not have fought each other, but Allah does what He wills. O you who believe, spend out of the bounties we have provided for you, before the day comes when no bargaining will avail, nor friendship nor intercession. Those who reject faith, they are the wrongdoers. Allah, there is no God. So this is Ayatul Kursi. Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 255. This is Ayatul Kursi. Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self-subsisting, supporter of all. No slumber can seize Him, nor sleep. His are all things in the heavens and on earth. Who is thee? Who is thee can intercede in His presence except as He permitteth? He knoweth what appeareth to His creatures as before or after or behind them, nor shall they compass aught of His knowledge except as He willeth. His throne doth extend over the heavens and the earth. Now, as I have said again and again, this heavens and the earth is a wrong translations, and we get sort of confused imagery if we stick to this translation. It's not heavens and earth at all. It's Let's keep that translation before we actually explain it in Surah Kahf and in Surah Anbiya. So his throne doth extend over the samawat and the earth. Now it will actually make more sense. We will come to it later. And he feeleth no fatigue in guarding and preserving them, for he is the most high, the supreme in glory. So this is Ayatul Kursi, and there are immense benefits of reciting Ayatul Kursi. So this is something very important. So we should make an effort to memorize this verse in Arabic and to recite it. Verse number 256 is also a very important verse. It says, La ikraha fid din. It says, let there be no compulsion in religion. So this itself proves that you cannot force a person, a non-Muslim, to accept Islam. By force, it's not allowed. If he accepts Islam, it has to be purely by his choice, not by force. By his choice means by the choice of the non-Muslims. No one can force him. The Quran makes it clear, let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Whoever rejects Taghut and believes in Allah hath grasped the most trustworthy handhold that never breaks, and Allah heareth and knoweth all things. Now, let there be no compulsion in religion, but then truth stands out clear from error. It doesn't mean that we are confused about the truth of Islam. No, we are sure, we are certain about the truth of Islam, but even then, we can reach out to them, we can invite them, we can preach about Islam to them, but we cannot force them to accept Islam. Allah is the protector of those who have faith. From the depths of darkness, He leads them forth into light. Of those who reject faith, the patrons are the Taghut. From light, they will lead them forth into the depths of darkness. They will be companions of the fire, to dwell therein forever. Hast thou not turned thy thought to one who disputed with Abraham about his Lord? To Ibrahim al-Islam about his Lord, because Allah had granted him power? Ibrahim al-Islam said, my Lord is he who giveth life and death. So now this is a discussion between Ibrahim al-Islam and Namrud, or in the English language it is referred to as Nimrod. My Lord is he who giveth life and death. He said, I give life and death. So now basically there is a conversation between Ibrahim al-Salam and Namrud. Namrud, you may be aware, was a very evil king during his time. He was contemporary to Ibrahim al-Salam. So in the course of the discussion, Ibrahim al-Salam was describing an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ibrahim al-Salam said, my Lord is he who giveth life and death. He said, so Namrud said, I give life and death. So there were two persons basically in his kingdom, in the kingdom of Nimrod, and one was to be punished, to be given death sentence. So what he did was he freed that person, and there was an innocent person. He killed that person. Now he was trying to prove that he could give life and death. The person who was to be given capital punishment, to be executed, to be given death sentence. I mean, to be the death sentence had already been the death sentence had already been pronounced, and he was awaiting execution. So he gave that person life. So this is Nimrod's argument. I'm not saying that what Nimrod is saying is correct, but this was Nimrod's argument. And then an innocent person, he killed him. So he said, he is now counter arguing that I give life and death. Said Abraham, but it is Allah that causeth the sun to rise from the east. But it is Allah that causeth the sun to rise from the east. Do thou then cause it to rise from the west. So you see, Ibrahim a.s. did not continue to argue with Nimrod. So this is not what is meant, but this and that and this and that. He did not, he knew that there was no point in arguing with this stupid person, with this foolish person, with this idiot. So he brought in a different logic. So this is a way to do dawah. This is a way to invite Islam. This is the sort of wisdom that we must have. Instead of arguing with a thing over which there is a dead end, sort of, though there was no dead end, there was much scope for argument. But how we should look at our lives, how much we waste our time over unnecessary arguments when it is almost sure that it will have no impact, no effect on the person these logic, these reasonings are being presented to. So we must bring in other points to the table. So Ibrahim alayhis salam, now he changed the subject and said Ibrahim alayhis salam, but it is Allah that causes the sun to rise from the east. So Ibrahim alayhis salam is now saying, my Rabb, Allah causes the sun to rise from the east. Do thou then cause it to rise from the west. At this, Nimrod was dumbfounded. Thus was he confounded who in arrogance rejected faith, nor doth Allah give guidance to a people unjust. Now there are a lot of issues which we can actually explore, but we don't want to discuss it now. We want to pick this verse for discussion during a series which we have long planned, but which is still awaiting, a series on the Dajjal. So we'll take this up for discussion during our series on the Dajjal, inshallah. So the next verse, chapter number 2, verse number 259, Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 259. So let's read this verse and I'll explain. Or take the similitude of one who passed by a hamlet, a village, or a town, all in ruins to its roots. He said, oh, how shall Allah bring it ever to life? After this, its death. But Allah caused him to die for 100 years, then raised him up again. He said, how long didst thou tarry thus? He said, perhaps a day or part of a day. He said, nay, thou hast tarried thus 100 years. But look at thy food and thy drink, they show no signs of age, and look at thy donkey, and that we may make thee a sign unto the people. Look further at the bones, how we bring them together and clothe them with flesh. When this was shown clearly to him, he said, I know that Allah hath power over all things. Now this is a story about Uzair alayhi salam. Uzair alayhi salam. Uzair alayhi salam was a prophet who is not mentioned by name in the Quran, but this incident about him is mentioned in the Quran, and he is mentioned in the Bible by name. So this is his story. Now, there is much we can discuss about this single verse. Perhaps we can discuss for more than 1 hour on this in this one verse alone. But then we will actually take this discussion up during this series, during our discussion on Surah Kahf, because this is somewhat related to a certain aspect of discussion which is very important to Surah Kahf actually. So the only thing is that for you to keep in mind now, because when we will discuss this incident, about this incident, Surah Kahf, we'll just refer back to it and not again give you the details. So just remember that the food and the drink was fresh, but the donkey had died and the bones were visible. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had resurrected the donkey. And initially, when Uzair alayhi salam, he questioned, it was not a challenge, it was not a question, that it was not to suggest that Allah cannot do it. When he said, oh, how shall Allah bring it ever to life after its death? So this was when he was passing by a hamlet, a village, which was all in ruins to its roots. So he was basically inquisitive, or he was just thinking about it, that how could this happen? So Allah showed him this miracle, how he actually resurrected the donkey. So then at the end, obviously, Uzair al-Islam will make the statement, I know that Allah has power over all things. But this difference, this is actually a very key difference, which will be very important during our discussion on Surah Kahf. Why the food and the drink was fresh, but the donkey had died and withered away to bones. So this is actually very important. So we continue with verse number 260. Behold, Abraham said, my Lord, show me how thou givest life to the dead. He said, dost thou not then believe? He said, yeah, but to satisfy my own heart. So this is another example in which Ibrahim alayhis salam is not actually challenging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is just curious about it. How can possibly Allah give life to death? So Allah asked, do you not believe? He said, I believe, but I just want to satisfy. Because once you experience something, your conviction is so much more enhanced. So sometimes when we actually explore and ponder and think, it's actually good. It's not something, Islam is not something to be believed in blindly. Islam is not a faith of blind belief. It's not. It's a faith which is logical, which is uh, reasonable, which follows reasoning, logic, which is, I mean, it's a perfect way of life. It's scientific. I mean, the criteria of Islam is far superior to any other criteria. So now the incident is narrated thus in the Quran. He said, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now telling Ibrahim alayhi salam, take four birds, tie them, cut them into pieces, then put a portion of them on every hill and call to them. They will come to thee flying with speed. Then know that Allah is exalted in power wise. The parable of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is that of a grain of corn. So now the subject is changing, and we'll discuss uh, about basically about economics, if you may call it that way. The parable of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is that of a grain of corn. It groweth 7 years, and each year hath 100 grains. Allah giveth manifold increase to whom He pleaseth, and Allah careth for all, and He knoweth all things. So basically, Allah rewards you as he may reward you even 700 times. See, the parable of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is that of a grain of corn. It groweth 7 years, so multiplied by 7, and each year hath 100 grains, so multiplied by 100. So 700 times the reward. Allah giveth manifold increase to whom He pleaseth, and Allah careth all, and He knoweth all things. So this is about the money that you spend in the way of Allah, and He rewards you 700 times. I mean, He does not reward you up to 700 times. He may reward you manifold times if He pleases. So this is just giving an example. Those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah. Now, spending the wealth in these verses, this is not about the zakat, this is about infaq. Now, zakat is something which is compulsory. It's a compulsory part of the deen, of the religion. Infaq is something which is over and above zakat. It's voluntary. Now, the more you give in the voluntary part, the greater the reward for you. So it's a test basically, and obviously you are having tremendous conviction and faith if you are doing infaq. It's so obvious to all of us that you have complete faith and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only then will you do infaq, otherwise you will not. So those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah, so those who do infaq in the way of Allah, in the cause of Allah, those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah and follow not up their gifts with reminders of their generosity or with injury, for them their reward is with their Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Now, if you are doing something voluntarily, if you're helping someone and you follow it up with reminders that how I have helped you, and you boast about yourself and try to show him down, or um, you say things to him which hurts him, even when it's not about money, even when it's about other help, this general rule will apply. So this is not something desired. Better is don't help at all. If you follow it up with sentiments such as these, that about you boasting, about you reminding how you have helped him, because you see, the ultimate help comes from Allah SWT. It's because Allah SWT bestowed you with wealth, excess wealth. Only because of that you are able to help. For those who are not blessed with wealth, how can they possibly help? If they don't have sufficient savings that does not reach the nisab level, then zakat is even zakat is not applicable on them. So it's only speaking about those who have been bestowed with excess wealth. So don't follow up with reminders of your generosity or with injury. So what happens in that case? For them, those who don't do, those who just in the cause of Allah they have given, and that's it. For them, the reward is with the Lord. On them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Kind words and covering of faults are better than charity, followed by injury. So this is what I was saying. Kind words and covering of faults are better than charity followed by injury. So if you give charity and then you tell him this and that, it's better is don't give, but be kind, be generous, cover the faults. So this is better than charity followed with injury. Allah is free of all wants, and He is most forbearing. O you believe, cancel not your charity by reminders of your generosity or by injury. It basically nullifies your reward. And actually, you incur sin, like those who spend their wealth to be seen of men, but believe neither in Allah nor in the last day. They are in parable like a hard, barren rock, on which is a little soil. On it falls heavy rain, which leaves it just a bare stone. They will be able to do nothing with aught they have earned, and Allah guideth not those who reject faith. And the likeness of those who spend their wealth seeking to please Allah and to strengthen their souls is as a garden, high and fertile. Heavy rain falls on it, but makes it yield a double increase of harvest. And if it receives not heavy rain, light moisture sufficeth it. Allah seeth well whatever you do. Does any of you wish that he should have a garden with date palms and vines and streams flowing underneath and all kinds of fruit, while he is stricken with old age and his children are not strong enough to look after themselves, that it should be caught in a whirlwind with fire therein and be burnt up? Thus doth Allah make clear to you his signs that ye may consider. O ye who believe, give of the good things which ye have honorably earned, and of the fruits of the earth which ye have produced for you, and do not aim at anything which is bad. Out of it ye may give away something, when ye yourselves would not receive it except with closed eyes. And know that Allah is free of all wants and worthy of all praise. Satan threatens you with poverty and bids you to conduct unseemly. Allah promiseth you his forgiveness and bounties, and Allah careth for all, and he knoweth all things. He granteth wisdom to whom he pleaseth, and he to whom wisdom is granted receiveth indeed a benefit overflowing, but none will receive admonition but men of understanding. And whatever you spend in charity, or whatever vow you make, be sure Allah knows it all. But the wrongdoers have no helpers. If you disclose acts of charity, even so it is well. But if you conceal them and make them reach those really in need, that is best for you. It will remove from you some of your stains of evil, and Allah is well acquainted with what you do. It is not for you to guide them to the right path, but Allah guides to the right path whom He pleaseth. Whatever of good ye give benefits your own souls, and ye shall only do so seeking the face of Allah. The word used is wajhullah. Wajh means face. So the countenance of Allah, the pleasure of Allah, meaning the pleasure of Allah. Whatever good ye give shall be rendered back to you, and ye shall not be dealt with unjustly. So now, basically, interesting passage is about to commence, and this discusses about riba. So we start with verse number 273. Charity is for those in need, who in who in Allah's cause are restricted from travel. So charity is for those in need, who in Allah's cause are restricted from travel and cannot move about in the land, seeking for trade or work. The ignorant man thinks, because of their modesty, that they are free from want. Thou shalt know them by their unfailing mark. They beg not importunately from all and sundry. And whatever good ye give, be assured Allah knoweth it well. So this is the transition basically, and now verse number 274 onwards we'll actually be discussing about riba. And so let's take a short break before we return to this very important subject of riba in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah chapter number 274 onwards. So let's take a short break before we return to this passage.